Got it.
Got it.
Nailed that.
Kathy. Ah,
All right.
Friday, everybody.
Yeah, Friday. Whew.
We've got so
TGIF.
much great stuff for you guys today.
Yeah. Did you guys pack a lunch? Do you have your lunch beside you for
Or a mid-morning snack or an evening
right?
snack.
Evening snack, middle of the night snack for those people that set their alarm clocks? I don't know if those people are still here, but I remember at the very beginning, we had people actually setting their alarm clocks to join us in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That was funny.
So from all over the world then.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Everybody, yeah, we have people from all over the world here representing.
I'm loving some of the colored backgrounds I'm seeing.
Oh yeah. Look at that. Look at Lisa checks.
Whoa, yeah.
Betty doesn't even know how colorful her bookcase is. I've never noticed it.
Yeah.
Betty's here all the time. Let's see.
I love a
I
love a backdrop bookcase, a bookcase backdrop. I think it's always so nice.
Yeah.
Not my bookcase.
My bookcase and my husband's bookcase are two different things. I was actually editing mine the other day and it was weird.
My library is organized by color. So I have all the yellow books together, all the spines. So
Well, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah, my
All
husband's
right.
into
How are we
science.
doing, Amy?
They're still coming in, like pretty fast.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Just like one more minute.
Okay.
All of a sudden, as I say that, it stopped. Oh, no.
Oh, there we go.
Oh.
Much better.
Okay. Well, I can go. I can do it, Kathy. I can do this.
All right, I'm letting them in.
Okay. Here we go.
Start singing the song. Is the dance collective ready?
Oh, and is everybody muted?
Is everybody muted?
Mutation.
Backup chorus.
The mutation. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Okay,
I see
hold on.
Suzanne warming up.
Suzanne. Okay, yeah. Suzanne's ready. Let's see.
And
Hold on.
count me in.
Oh, I almost just shared my inbox. That's great. All right, you guys ready?
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback Friday.
Well, good morning. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It is Botanical Colors Feedback Friday, and today is episode 79.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. We've done this for 79 weeks. This is our weekly show where we speak with dyers, artists, scientists, writers, activists, growers, and scholars about our favorite topic, which is natural dyes and color. You know me, I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors, and joining me from the Cape is Amy Dufault, who is our sustainability and communications director. And we are so pleased this week to welcome the Color Association of the United States, plus a trunk show with our dear friend Aboubakar Fofana. So, I mean, if there was any Feedback Friday that you needed to watch, this is the one. So you are here. We're so happy that you are joining us. Leslie Harrington is the executive director of the Color Association of the US, and Tess Murdoch, who is normally on the East Coast, but is currently in sunny Los Angeles, is the senior trend analyst, are with us today, and they're going to give us some background history on CAUS, as well as showing us some amazing color cards that tell a deeper story than just color and trend. They reflect the mood of the nation or of certain cultural things that are occurring. And it's really interesting to see how color is captured during those times. So think about things like, well, we don't want to have to think about it, but think of influences such as war or economic upturns or downturns, and how that influences color. So that's what Leslie and Tess have dedicated their careers to. It's really, really super interesting to see the colors that we wear and where they come from. We're also going to talk about our launch with them. So this was the first time ever, EVER, that natural dyes were featured as part of the color palette from any color forecasting group. So what an amazing journey that was. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then after the presentation, Aboubakar Fofana is here, and he's going to be joining us with a slideshow and a little discussion about some of the things that he has in his collection, which is online at Botanical Colors. So Amy is just going to be feeding you the link so you can have a look at things as you see them on the screen. And yeah, she's good at it, so don't worry. And feel free to browse. Now, I just want to say that all of this stuff is custom made. So if there are things that are interesting to you, you can always have a discussion about making it personalized for you. And that's part of what the beauty of these garments and accessories is. Okay, so before we start, I just want to say thank you, everybody. We're at the end of the year. We've got one more Feedback Friday next week before we adjourn and pretty much just lie down for 2 weeks. And I just want to say thank you. 2021 was even crazier than 2020, believe it or not. So we're at the end. We made it. Thank you. We couldn't have done it without you. And we love all of you. All right, a little housekeeping. Amy is going to be moderating. And so she'll be kind of watching out for everybody. As well, once we open it up for questions at the end of Leslie and Tess's presentation, then she'll be monitoring the chat and feeding the questions to our presenters. The call's being recorded because I hit that button, and a video copy of it will be available to you after this weekend. All right, so that's my intro. Leslie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Tess, welcome.
Hi. Hello.
And, so thankful that you guys are joining us. Take it away.
Yeah, so grateful to be here. Very honored. I'm going to share my screen and give kind of a little presentation on just the historical context behind which CAUS was founded, the Color Association.
And this is Tess, you guys.
Oh, hi. Yes, I'm Tess. I'm Tess Murdoch. I'm the senior trend analyst for the Color Association, and meaning I am working with Leslie all the time, wearing many hats, many colorful hats. So yeah, so I will share my screen and kind of get into it here. Oh. And of course I did this. Okay. So I always love kind of starting with a quote, and I love this one by Sasha Durer, who's a friend of the Botanical Colors family, that there are so many ways in which working with natural color can connect us deeply to people, place, and to the planet. Just kind of a nice meditation to start with. So let's get into it. This is an image of the Lower East Side of New York City in 1900. It's a colorized image, but the turn of the 20th century brought with it immense shifts in every aspect of social, political, and economic life in the United States. Industrialization continued to increase its pace by feeding scalability models in most industries, meaning as a business grew, it relied on more and more resources to feed it. And of course, we know that extracted resources are finite, which is of course why we are in the climate situation we are in. But I digress. And these are examples of American fashion in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. One can see vast shifts in silhouettes, colors, and details in just a short period of time. We know that the end of World War I brought a decade of immense growth and great prosperity for some demographics in this country, and that is reflected directly in the fashion of the time. Also of note, each ensemble until around the 1960s is just that, an ensemble of hats, gloves, hosiery, buttons, belts, and shoes, etc., for all kinds of different occasions. This brings us to the founding of the Color Association of the United States, which was once the Textile Color Card Association of the United States. And that was what it was called since 1914 for the first several decades of the 20th century. So 1914 marked the onset of World War I, which was essentially cutting the US off and all manufacturers from most of Europe and the once steady stream of trends and influences they relied on. The apparel industry, which was made up of many separate specialty manufacturers, were suddenly inspired to create a syndicate that tackled the challenge of standardizing color for the nation. So on November 17th, 1914, 107 years ago, a meeting of 9 gentlemen was held at the offices of the Silk Association of America, located in New York City. These gentlemen represented various organizations that were primarily part of the fashion industry. This meeting, more than a century ago, represents the birth of what we now know as the Color Association of the United States of America. So, one of the most important outcomes of this meeting was that it was agreed that a color card would represent the knowledge of multiple industry constituents rather than a single manufacturer or style house. The color card would eventually be representative of their market needs and not that of Paris, suggesting that, quote, if we get that support, we will be able to make shades for the United States that everybody will use in unison according to the color. So, fun fact, these silhouettes actually are representative of World War I because there was such a huge fabric shortage that we have this narrowing of silhouettes, lessening of fabrics used, and kind of, you know, derby bowler hats and a lot of different styles that emerged at that time. So that brings us to what color forecasting actually is, which is kind of steeped in mystery a lot of the time. And what exactly is our process at the Color Association of the United States? So there is no shortage of content and written material. And now we have many, many types of standardized color models and companies that exist, like Color of the Years, like Color of the Year, and all of these different types of companies that put this out. But, you know, I think that this quote by Montaha Hadefi, the VP of Color Forecasting of the Color Marketing Group, really, really resonates and sums what I consider color forecasting is and how I look at it and use it, where color trends are the manifestation of society development, our identities, how we interact with each other, and how we deal with innovation and technology. They measure the pulse of our social and generational evolution. So, now, to talk a little bit about the process, these are the initial, this slide and the next slide are talking about concepts, and they're basically showing examples of what different committee members bring to a meeting. So we have physical, actual material, we have color samples, and everyone kind of brings in this material and then we present it. So nothing has really shifted too much in a century. We used to meet in person, but for the past 2 years, we've obviously been doing this virtually, which has completely shifted the process in terms of we can't present physical material in front of each other. You know, we can't wait to get back to that. But Our committee members represent a broad spectrum of people who engage with color daily or who are directly involved in making color decisions for a product range, such as designers, marketers, color technicians, scientists, consultants, educators, and artists. They typically service a wide range of market sectors. So our mission is to create a relevant and accurate color and trend forecast for directions up to 2 years in advance. So for apparel, it's 2 years in advance. And for interiors, it's 3 years in advance. And for the automobile industry, it's up to 5 years in advance. So this is basically, we move from presenting the actual materials, now we're doing it virtually, into consolidating the materials. So this is actually part of the consolidation process. And then this is a really, really fascinating part of the process, because there are some seasons in which many color overlaps occur, and then some seasons that don't. And I wonder if you can guess which emerge out of times of precarity and which emerge out of times that are seemingly more stable. So this is kind of in person. This was the first meeting I ever attended. And this is Sherry Dongia's fabulous hand on the left. And so, you know, we can't wait to get back to this period of doing this together. So from the consolidation process, we then move into the kind of outcome, which is just the actual final trends and palettes. And then we move into the final color report. So this is what goes out to all members. There's a digitized version of this on the website. And this is the actual physical report. This is something unique that we do, is that we actually have textiles on our cards. And this brought us to Kathy and Amy, who dyed, Kathy and her team dyed the silks that were in the women's forecast for spring 2023. So, of course, I had to wonder what's going on here. Oh, okay. So yeah, considering that forecasting is so much about responding to socioeconomic and political factors, we really wanted to do more than just talk about sustainability in our forecast meetings. Thus, this beautiful relationship evolved with Kathy and Amy. And so thank you, Keith Recker. Also wanted to shout out to Keith Recker, who kind of made this introduction as well. We will talk to Kathy and Amy in a bit, but I'm going to hand it off to Leslie, who's going to show some really beautiful examples from the archive that do indeed reflect how color responds to its environment and how it engages with the future as well. So thank you so much. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Tess.
Yeah.
Really great. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm Leslie Harrington. I'm the director of the Color Association, and I've been there since 2007. Prior to that, I've been worked in many facets of industry, and probably one of my longest stints was I was, director of design, color and design for Benjamin Moore Paint. So if you ever wonder who named all those colors and picked all those colors when you go into the store and you can never find the one you want, you can blame me a little bit for that. Anyway, so one thing I think Tess did was she sort of made it sound really simple, this process, and the images don't show you the chaotic mess that sort of happens between individuals showing what they think is going to happen, putting it all together, and then a simple report on the other end. But it can be quite a chaotic mess, from the sense that sometimes we have 400, 500 different color samples laid out on a table that we have to consolidate down. I wanted to show you some of the articles that we have in our archive. And again, it's hard to sort of describe it, but we probably have well over 700 articles in our archive. Many of them have been digitalized and are on our website, but there are many that aren't. And the reason we many years ago took the time to digitalize the color and photograph all the archive items was our desire to be able to want to share it with the world. and not keep it that's something that's hidden away in some dark closet, and which is what it was for many, many years. So Tess gave you a sneak peek when she showed you that, wonderful little image, but I had pulled 10 cards out to show you. And Amy and Kathy told me I can only show you 4 or 5 because of time constraints, but I did want to slip in one more. And this was a card that was actually, I think it was 1922. We also had a relationship with the manufacturer of hosiery and underwear back in 1922. And this was the first card that was produced. It was actual silk stocking materials and showing all the colors that were recommended for 1922 for hosiery. And I think it's always interesting because the 20s, as we know, was this crazy flapper roaring 20 thing. And we can see here just the color of stockings that quite often we don't even think about when we think back to that time. So these are certain little glimpses. I thought that what I might do is share with you a collection of 3 cards that spanned about 25 years. And they are from a glove collection. Now, nowadays, the categories we forecast in are women's, men, and activewear and interior environments. But back probably starting at about the 40s, we moved away from forecasting in basically silks and woolens to forecasting in product categories, such as gloves, hats, shoes, millinery, and all the elements that made an ensemble. But all of those ensemble pieces were made by different people. They weren't sort of in one company. And thus there were forecast reports distributed to everybody so they knew what the other people were doing. So this lovely little card was 1942. And one of the reasons that I wanted to share it with you is because I thought what was interesting in it is the text. This is one of the few cards that actually does have text that tells you sort of what we were thinking about at the time. And what was interesting to me about this is we all know 1942 was in the middle or near the end of World War II. And what was interesting is the fact that in this card, it states, to aid in the conserving of dyestuffs needed for war production, the association in choosing the 1942 fall glove shades has followed and adopted policies upon by its dyestuff advisory committee. The shades in this card therefore have been selected not only for their fashion and merchandising value, but also because they fulfill the government's requirements with regards to dyestuff conservation. For the season, in addition to essential basic tones, the color selection contains new highlights and promotional shades, which are smartly contrasting the basics or can be used in harmonizing tones. So I think that it's kind of interesting to note that back then, now, because the card is 1942 doesn't mean that we forecasted in 1942. Remember, this was probably being done around 1940, 1941, but none of these cards have publication dates with them. So the color names quite often give us some indication to what's going on if we don't have it. So this one, you have a color name Victory Gold, you have Salute Blue, Freedom Red, and one of my favorite ones, sorry, it's so hard to kind of show you these little treasures close up on too, is Bomber Gray, which again are names that are purely descriptive, but are, give us some insight into what people were thinking about. The next glove card was 1955, and all of a sudden you can see in 10 years, we've gone to something bigger, something more dramatic, something more interesting. And we know in the 50s, there were lots of different things starting to happen. Most notably, it was around the time that Martin Luther King was leading the first civil rights movement. And also, believe it or not, it was the time that McDonald's and Disney World opened in this country. So the card, obviously being a bright fuchsia red, is indicative of what was sort of happening from what people were thinking. But also you can see that the colors are much more vibrant 10 years later than they were back then. And the little glove samples, I think, which indicate, one, we're not conserving as much, And two, the fabric is almost like, it's almost like an ultra suede or something like that, that they've put them in and die cut them. The text on this says, where did the text go? These glove colors have been especially created to key smartly with new shades for spring summer promotion by the Association for Textile, Millinery, and Related Fashion Industries, thus assuring close coordination and harmony and contrasting between gloves and the ensemble. These colors are for leather and for fabric. So it's kind of, some of the color names, they're always fun. Wild Lime, Radiant Peacock, Coral Lily, and Cherise. What was that one? Cherise Jubilee, Cherries Jubilee. So some of them remind me of popular drinks and cocktails of the time. In 1969, just one more, this ends sort of almost our 25-year period. The card becomes extremely boring. 1969, we remember as, you know, a time that was coming to the end of sort of a very interesting period. Richard Nixon was newly elected, and he was withdrawing the troops from Vietnam. The first man on the moon was walking. The Beatles recorded their last album, Abbey Road. But there was also a real riot and uprising in the gay community. And I guess some of us also remember this period as when we have Woodstock emerging, which to me, doesn't make sense. I thought this card would be much more bold and dynamic, but you can see the shades inside and the variety that they have. The text on this card, since you probably can't read it, is sweet, short and sweet, and it says, "The hand of fate is in the gloved hand. Pert and pretty is in fresh tones. It beckons fashion with a subtle gesture and provocative signs. Ready to wear spans the range from pale snowy tones to lively brights and rich deep shades. Gloves match the mode. Also featured are the millinery promotion colors, which include sulfur gold, Parisian blue, chivalry green, and lively rust." So it was interesting. I think one of the things about the archives is you can do this journey through the years of a collection and kind of see what happens between it. So I just want to maybe share one more card with you, if I may. Do I have time for that? Yes, for sure. And I want to go to the 1980s. What do we remember about the 80s? Materialism and consumerism, the decade of the yuppies, the explosion of blockbuster movies, and also in fashion, big, bold style, color, silhouettes, and of course, huge amounts of permed hair. And look at what we have here, which is totally different than what we did before. This card is like so big, I got to go back here. But anyways, and when you open it up inside, it's just like a huge amount of color and stuff like that. This card has no text on it whatsoever. So it's impossible to know exactly what people were thinking. The only way we can have sort of some insights would be by looking at the color names. So some of them include, for one collection, Sputnik Red, Apollo Gold, Mariner Blue, Venus Pink, Jupiter Green, and Nassau Red. So what do you think they were thinking about at that time? Well, one of the things that was happening just before 1984 was we were getting ready for the launch of the Space Shuttle Challenger. So that was probably some indication of what people were thinking. But at this time, we had no idea what the outcome of that would be. Thus, the colors were not indicative of that. And that sort of gives you a glimpse of some of the colors that we have. I did want to end with our women's forecast, our most recent one, spring, summer 2023, only because this was the one Tess was referring to with our relationship with Botanical Colors. And you can see that we went small again, but the reason we're smaller is because we think it's indicative of the times of creating more of a personal experience with color. And one of the big topics that we had when we were talking about color this season was sustainability. And we were thinking, we always, custom dye our silks, but they're usually synthetically dyed. And we thought, if we're going to talk about sustainability, maybe we should actually walk the talk. And that's when we got in touch with Kathy and Amy to say, can we actually dye our colors this time with natural dyes instead of relying on the good old chemical phase. And so I think that that was the next sort of phase of this conversation today, was to have Amy sort of tell us about what that experience was like dyeing these wonderful 25 shades from our spring summer 2013 collection.
Leslie, I'm going to say that I didn't do a single dyeing of a single piece of silk for you guys. It was all Kathy Hattori and the team in Seattle. I just
Amy was the
helped get it
cheerleader.
down. I'm the cheerleader, but yeah, absolutely. Just I'd love for Kathy to sort of weigh in, because people are definitely asking questions about sustainability as part of this. So Kathy, I know I'm going to put you on here too.
Sure.
So I know you have a lot of the colors behind you
I
that you.
have some of the colors behind
Yeah.
me. But these are all outtakes. These are like so Leslie has what we matched and I have what we kept. So yeah, so Leslie sent me this. And I looked at it and I went, oh. So yeah, so it was really an interesting experience, because I think what's from our perspective, right, what we do is we basically have a range of dyes that come from natural resources and plants, and so it's like the substance informs us what the color is, and I had this as the goal, right? So it took a while for us to kind of hear what the colors were telling us so that we could then create the color. So it was a really fascinating experience. I did probably the first half of the card by myself. So I was just actually muttering to myself as I was developing color. And then Kate Rosendale, who is one of our team members here, joined me. And so then we would like be muttering to each other. And Kate has a graphic arts background. So it was good for me to have her kind of mutter too blue, right? Because then I go, oh, right. And then I'd look at another range of dyes that could probably reach it a little bit more closely. So there was just this constant conversation with us, as well as with the plants or the insect dyes that we used, and where we could figure out, can we move it this way, or how do we get, I think where we really sort of were challenged was the intensity of the colors, like, because a synthetic dye is, it's a dye that is only meant to create that color for that substance. So there are dyes for silk, there are dyes for cotton, there are dyes for polyester, etc. And all of those are super saturated. And then the people that work in commercial dye facilities will add just one drop of one color in order to create the range, or they'll put a drop from this one, a drop from that one, a drop from that one, and they have it all categorized. So it's still a really highly refined skill, but they definitely have a little bit more standardization of the shade, I would say, to work with. Whereas we were looking like in the case of using madder, right? I have like 6 different preparations from 2 different varieties. So we're all like, there's this little grid that goes on in your head. It's like, am I doing it this way? Or am I doing it that way? Am I going to shift it? Am I going to intensify it? You were making all of these color decisions on the fly every single round. And then there were these heartbreak moments where we nailed it so good. It was so beautiful. And then when we pulled it out and dried it, it was uneven. I mean, so uneven we couldn't submit, right? But I mean, I think it's on any level for any person. I think it's a really great exercise for you to just look at, a few colors and say, how do I make those colors in the dyes and the palette that I have? And I think the other thing that is a real distinctive hallmark of natural dyes is lots of dyers kind of make their whole persona around certain colors that are natural, right? There are people like our friend Aboubakar, who is here. He is very invested and has his whole cultural and existence around indigo and what indigo means to him and how his work with indigo informs his art, as well as his art informs his work with indigo. In the synthetic dye world, I don't think you see anybody who is going to plant their stake on a fiber reactive dye and say, this is my color. I mean, except for a couple of really, really high profile colors that have been named after their inventors, there really isn't that there really isn't that happens. I mean, any dyer with some background can look at a red and go, oh, I bet that's from madder. But I don't know that we could look at a red t-shirt and say, oh, that was fiber reactive, 4R. We just don't have that vocabulary or that information. So it was just coming from a completely different place and looking at a palette that was developed for basically commercial applications, and trying to figure out how to kind of thread that. And that was what made it, my hair wasn't this gray, I guess.
I guess one of the questions is, would you do it again?
Oh yeah, I mean, I am doing it right now. I'm doing it on another substrate. I'm doing it for a yarn company, so I'm a little more familiar with wool and yarn. So it's a little, it's just different. But yeah, it was really fascinating because it made us do things to create color that we don't normally do.
Right.
But I thought that the results were pretty incredible.
They really were. And I think the thing for us is we didn't change our forecasting process to say we're going to create a forecast based on natural dyes or natural dye capability or range. We really, with our committee of, 8 people that all brought on in all their stuff, we said, okay, let's just do this. And then at the end of it, we sent you that card that said, okay, this is what we came up with. What can you do? And that's like when you said, oh crap.
Well, it wasn't so much, oh crap. It was like, oh, because you kind of see like where the family of color was going to come together, but you didn't quite know what the outcome was.
Right. And in our preliminary discussions, we actually said that we weren't even sure if we were going to be able to hit, 50% of the colors, 10%, 100%. And we did 100%, which is really remarkable. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was really, really interesting and really fun.
Yeah, great. So
Kathy, thanks, Leslie. Got a bunch of questions here and
bunch of questions,
but I'm thinking of tying Kathy into some things here, but this, maybe you can start kicking this off, Leslie. So somebody's asking, how have the goals of the committee changed over the years? And then another person's asking, how are things that happen in the world impacting that color too? So, the color forecasting itself. So do the goals of the committee change in terms of water efficiency, energy efficiency, kind of thinking about things like that moving forward that are environmental things that are happening in the world? Is that having an impact on what the goals are? And
I think the overall goals of the committee are still to look into the future and figure out what colors are consumers going to be looking to purchase, what are the drivers from a color standpoint, because all these manufacturers need to start to put color into production, right? Although with fast fashion or things changing, one of the things that we've seen is because we used to forecast 2 years in advance, a lot of our customers or members are actually maybe only forecasting 6 months in advance now. So some of what we're doing is too far out for them. And once upon a time, they would do 2 collections a year. And now some of them are doing 8 collections a year. So we'd give them 25 colors and they really need 50 colors now in a year. So those are some of the dynamics that are changing. But on the other hand, some of some of our members are forecasting 5 years out. So 2 years is almost like this wasteland now. You either have to get much faster or much more futuristic or farther, or have more foresight into the future, which is really, really difficult on both ends. I think that one of the other things we talk a lot about it, and I know Tess could probably chime in on this, is that just the whole notion of forecasting, is it even valid anymore? And where will be the future of forecasting? Because, you know, once upon a time, the reason that we pumped out all these new colors all the time was to stimulate consumer consumption, right? You come out with a hot new color, so everybody rushes and buys it. But nowadays, we're not necessarily looking to do that. So how does that actually change the way we approach color and color forecasting? And so that's one of the big things that we're actually looking at right now as well. So I don't know, Tess, did you have anything on that you wanted to sort of say, or?
Yeah, I mean, a lot to say on these kinds of subjects, because I also am a natural dyer. I have I work with handcrafts and very slow processes of making personally. So I have this kind of I have a perspective where my lens is very human scaled and always trying to celebrate slow processes of making, which is really interesting working in color forecasting, because often I think a lot of people do understand that forecasting, you know, it does promote consumption, right? So it feeds into an industry that, you know, is about the final product. So I think with us, we are at a place where, yes, we don't want to necessarily, we want to be human scaled. And I think that we're trying to figure out what that means. And I think trying to engage in this dialogue where we're not just talking about sustainability, because that word is so overused at this point, right? So, but actually, what does that mean in forecasting? And it obviously means many different things, but I think there is this component that we have influencers, we have the metaverse, we have a technology and companies like Coloro that are basically just feeding into the virtual space. And that along with people on Instagram and social media platforms create that kind of vortex, right? With not needing to even rely on forecasting, because everyone thinks they're their own forecaster. So I think what we bring to the table is inspiration, and we bring pause, we bring questions, and engaging in a dialogue about many different topics. You know, many companies now have in-house teams that are deciding, that are colorists. So we act as kind of validation, risk mitigation, these types of tools that inspire the colorists within a company and help them realize, you know, since we have been doing, well, I personally have not been doing this for over a century, but, you know, that we do have this archive that has precedent and is incredibly relevant today. So, yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tess.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Amy.
No, you're feeling it. If you're feeling it, you keep
Well,
going.
I'm looking at some of the questions, and I knew these questions were coming.
Well, I've got one prepped right here just to like.
Oh,
kind of-
yeah.
But darn it, and I just lost my question I had for you that was related to. Anyways, I'm just going to go to this question. So, are you evaluating after the year or season to see how closely the outputs of the industry align with your original recommendations?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And so for us, it's the forecasting is a very secular process, right? So to forecast, we look at the past, the present, and try to look into the future. And part of you know, when a forecast is published, it almost, depending on how people use it, because different industries have different cycles, it lives in the present, and then it kind of moves itself to being the past. And part of the past it's the past for us, but it's also the present for other industries. And so that's when we can do a validation exercise where we can say, this is what we thought was going to happen. And all of a sudden we look at, Tess does a great job of this. And if you go to our Instagram, you can see it where she'll look at the, the music awards and bam, you see exactly the same shade Rihanna's wearing and a shade that we forecasted 2 years prior. That's really satisfying for us when we see those kinds of things happen. But at the same time, keep in mind, we're 2 years in advance. When 9/11 happened or the pandemic happened or any of these other kind of major events happened that we never could foresee, those sometimes have dramatic, throw what we might have thought into a whole different trajectory, right? Then what we have to do is we kind of have to say, okay, wait a minute, how will that impact what it was that we thought was going to happen?
Yep, thanks. I'm excited to hear the answer to this question too. And I lost it because I was writing something down about Tess and her amazing skills at Instagram.
Oh, geez.
But
it's color. It's a lot of color inspiration. It's
really
Instagram
great
right now.
You just block out the fact not everything's natural dyed, but there's a lot.
Yes, not
Leslie's saying and Tess, you're saying there's a lot of inspiration there for color itself. Like Kathy was saying the same thing. It's this kind of look at color, what can be done, what can't be done.
Yeah.
And but somebody had asked about something about Pantone. Sorry, about how Pantone influences you or if you
the color of the year. Yeah. So this is a really good question, especially since Pantone launched their color of the year. I think it was yesterday. And it was very, very Perry, which interestingly enough, I immediately went to our archive resource on our website. We have a color name index of 25,000 colors we've named over the last 100+ years. Where you can search it. And I think we've actually named a color very Perry, but I can't remember what year we named it in, way before Pantone did it. But the whole color of the year thing is interesting. And there are many different sort of facets of it. It was an extremely great marketing initiative by Pantone that many other companies and mostly paint companies jumped on the bandwagon. And, it really addressed a consumer question, which is, what is the color going to be this year? Everybody was kind of asking it, but nobody was literally answering it. So the challenge I have with color of the year is that color is contextual, like the color that works in a car, that works in your cell phone, and that works in as your new jacket are usually not always the same. And one color usually doesn't translate or work across all those different platforms. So having a color of the year is really kind of a tough thing. What I think is interesting, and that maybe some people know, is when Pantone launches their color of the year, they've decided on it probably 6 months or a year in advance, maybe not a year in advance, 6 months in advance. And so there is a reason why when you go out now, you're going to see the color of the year available in a Mixmaster, OPI nail polish, and a bunch of other products, because they've already had discussions with those people so that they already started making it and putting it into the market. So it's like almost fulfilling the prophecy that this is the color of the year. And that's one of the things people quite often will accuse us of doing as forecasters, is we just fulfill our own prophecy. We say this is going to happen, so then it happens. But I always say to people, the one thing that you have to remember is that we can always tell you what we think colors are going to be. And manufacturers, design houses can put color into the marketplace, but unless the consumer buys it, unless it drops down to the bottom line, it doesn't get picked up and it doesn't return. So for a color to be successful, it has a long cycle. It starts slow and then it builds and then it's in everything and then it starts to tail down. And it never really becomes a trend. It becomes a fad, so to speak, if it's here one year, gone the next year. So color of the year is really kind of interesting thing. And if it truly is a trend, and I think it is on trend, we've seen that color coming into the marketplace for a very long time. It's not a new color at all for us. The question is it kind of maybe peaking this year? And I think it is close to the top, but we're still forecasting those purple shades into spring 23 as well, which is, I think it's not a color for this year. You're going to see that color continue for a number of different years. And other colors too. We're not going to see cars in very Perry.
That might actually be really cool. You know,
Actually,
we start.
I should say we might.
We might, I think they might
Never-
be
we
some
might.
kind of, yeah, there'll
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
a
I'd also like to see more cars having sustainable fabrics inside, but that's a whole other story.
yeah.
So,
Well, that's, yeah, the end product. I mean, anyway, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm going to edit this question. I'm going to cut it in half, and I want Kathy here. I'm going to spotlight Kathy too. It's like we're on a news show.
For pundits.
Yeah. So people, okay. So Sonia Wolfram's asking, do you feel you have had or will have an influence on industry opinions about the potential for natural dye use with and I'm going to throw in with this collaboration?
Mhm.
I hope to God so, yes.
I think that was one of our intentions. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, yeah,
Tess and I have been, ever since we've been watching the conversations that you've been having with design houses about trying to move towards a natural dye solution for their colors. And we believe that we can help maybe make that change and bring that to market.
Yeah, I mean, the obstacle is scalability, right? Like we keep kind of hitting this point about, which brings it back to the consumer, right? I think in educating the consumer. So it's in this like very interesting mix of this discourse right now. So there isn't one answer. Obviously, this is all, I think, going to be evolving, and but it is dire. Where, so I think that if we can provide pause again, I think pause at this point within the forecast is one entering point at this point. So
my thoughts on this are the scalability is there, but I also am a little worried about consumption. I don't really want to position natural dyes as another throwaway fad. Oh, we did that. I mean, because we saw that 20 years ago, 25 years ago, where there was this huge push, and then it was around for a year or two, and for whatever reasons, it, maybe it was technology, maybe it was just the feel of where people were at that time. I think the word dire is interesting because, yeah, people are feeling like they have got to make some changes. Lots of people, we're seeing this as a result of the pandemic. People are saying, I no longer want to do this, or I no longer want to work here. I want to do whatever else. And that the natural world, which is so threatened, is, we're looking at it much more closely. So there's some really interesting dynamics happening. We're both really thrilled and really scared, I would say, is the best way to put it. That,
yeah,
there's some incredible opportunities and some issues.
We deal kind of with this competition with the virtual world as well, because so many trend services are going to just printing digital online forecasts, and you don't even get real samples anymore.
Right.
And we say, well, how can you actually even make valid color decisions without actually seeing the color? And in some cases, how can you do it without even touching the color in the material that you want it to be in? Because the consumer is going to do that. So how do you just like send off a Pantone number to China and say, make it in this color, without experiencing it? But that's what a lot of people are moving towards doing. So
Yeah.
it's kind of this natural, virtual world too, that we believe in. Yeah.
I think an interesting point to touch on as well is, I know I'm looking at the questions and there's some really awesome questions, and I need a part two, but part two of the Feedback Friday. But one of the things that Leslie and I and all of the forecast committee members are talking about often is the dissolution of seasons and gender, right? So that's kind of not relevant as much anymore. I mean, so it's a conversation that we're also having, that I think that there is this this move into this place. And if, seasonality is kind of the antithesis of sustainability, right? Because that feeds into consuming more. So we're in this place of trying to really, do we need 40 colors? Do we need 8 colors? What can you look, like someone, my color, Kathy Lambert, my color for the year are the ones in my closet. How do we bring that back into a place that is, relevant to CAUS as well, and speaks to the future. So that's another thing that we're also thinking about.
And if I can throw something in here too, I think I speak on behalf of Kathy too, that just that you guys wanted to do this was a really big deal to offer this idea of natural dyes to your audience who aren't used to seeing natural dyes in that way. I think that's really exciting. And also there's a couple questions where people are asking about getting the recipes for the colors that were made for you. And I will put a plug in for Kathy and the team here that there's lots of colors you can look at that are part of that swatch book that was created. Kathy definitely offers consulting, and we do work with brands large and small to match colors as best as possible to the colors that they want, whether it's a color association color or a color that they have in their closet or whatever. But it might make Kathy insane trying to match that color, but we do offer production and consulting for brands large and small, and that's a big part of our business for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So
Amy,
that's care of this.
I
Yes.
think- I think because we've got a part 2 to
Oh, should we wrap it up?
Friday today. Yeah, let's,
Okay.
unless there's a quick last question.
No, there's thanks Kim for saying, thank you Tess and Leslie for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe
guys.
we are talking to ourselves. I don't know.
Well, that's, part 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely
Like,
part 2, but I don't think we're just talking to ourselves because
No.
we're feeding this out to our membership.
Yeah.
And the
then
members, the members in the committee are all working for very large corporate
Mhm.
entities, and they're also talking about these points.
Yeah.
So it's basically having to change the systems in place, right?
Right.
So
It is a new paradigm. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and the thing is that we have to keep talking about it, and we
Mhm.
all have to talk about it. And if we do, we can actually make a difference.
mhm.
Yes.
And we can't be afraid of it, and we can't stop doing it, which is why you and I have to talk about the next set of colors.
That'd be fantastic.
Oh, God.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Oh, you guys,
Yes,
thank you. That was
thanks,
really
Yeah.
great.
Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna just keep moving here. And Leslie and Tess and everyone else, please stick around to see these incredible images and pieces from Aboubakar's collection. But just a couple of logistical things. So shipping this year is kind of wild. If you're trying to make Christmas gift deadlines, we really encourage you to try to get your orders in by next Wednesday, so that we can get stuff turned around and back out to you so you can have it for gifting. And we had a really lovely workshop with Rachel McHenry yesterday and her Botanica Tinctoria line of patterns and trim and embroidery threads. And she did a bunch of different techniques for us. It was really fascinating. So those are all new to the site. And also so fantastic, those of you who are in the Great Lakes / Chicago area, Sasha Durr has just put out her latest color wheel for that said area, and it is really beautiful. So we are supposed to get our copies by, I think, Tuesday of this coming week and of next week. And so if you want to order it, we're going to have it. Okay, next week we're going to have Britt Bowles of Sea Spell Fiber. She is the Indigo doula. This woman knows more about extracting pigment from Persicaria than pretty much most of us. Like, she She's impressive. So she's going to be joining us next week. We can't wait to see that. She's got some clamp resists with a big C clamp on our Feedback Friday holiday marketplace. So and these are the last of them. They're having, they're going to need to retool those. So what she has is what she has for a while. If you've been interested, you better pick one of those up. And I think that's it. But now we're going to have my dear, dear friend Aboubakar is here joining us from Paris. And I am going to share a screen that's got a bunch of slides on it. You guys, I'm really bad with PowerPoint, so you're just going to have to bear with me, okay? Oops. It really helps to have it up. One moment.
And don't share the sale that you were just looking at.
I know, the shoes.
Socks and shoes.
Yeah, I did. One moment. Here we go. I'm going to try that. Now I'm sharing. So you have to talk myself through this. Everybody else always shares. All right, here we go. You guys all see that? Slideshow. Ta-da. Welcome, Aboubakar.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everyone, for staying for this exchange. And thank you, Kathy, for making this gathering happen. And yeah, I'm very happy to be able to see all of you and to share some of my work here. For those who are maybe not familiar with my work, my name is Aboubakar Fofana, and I'm originated from West Africa, Mali. I'm French as well, and I'm a visual artist, fiber artist, designer, and what else I can say? Yeah, so, and I've been involved for a certain number of years now with some specific medium like Indigo or mud dyeing, who's very technically is one of the most important how can I say, color used in West Africa, in Mali, especially. So yes, I'm working in a farming project as well, farming different species of West African or indigenous indigo, Philoneptera cyanescent, and Indigo ferrarecta, especially. And of course, I'm involved in sustaining indigenous tradition, weaving, spinning, weaving, and dyeing. And here you can see the finimugu means literally the raw material. And this organic hand-spun cotton is very specific from West African narrow strip looms, is one of my very dear projects, trying to sustain, to maintain this tradition by still giving or asking those who have the skill still to do hand spinning using a drop spindle. It's a very time-consuming and labor-intensive process to be able to get a few meters of textile in a narrow bands. And then from this raw material, I'm creating different products, fashion accessories, garments. I'm not a fashion designer. I have a very, I see garments in a very different way than in a fashion or trend aspect. And yes, I'm in this duality in between fiber and dyes. And yes, so here the most important for me by using this material is working in the minimal waste of fabric or zero waste. And these narrow bands are very suitable for this technique. And of course, by working with this fiber, everything is hand tailored as well, because hand spun, hand woven, and for me, I think it's very important to go in this hand tailoring aspect, and of course, hand dyed. So those collections are called, like, I would say, heritage collection, because the way I see garments, as I said, is not in a really fashionable way, is thinking more that fiber is human's second skin, and it's here to protect us. But also by using all those dyes to dye those garments, I always talk about this therapeutic aspect of my fibers or my textiles. And of course, when people come to ask how scientifically I can prove that they are therapeutic, I'm not a scientist, but my ancestors have been using dyes for this aspect. And all the dyes we use traditionally are also medicinal plants. Myself, I've been introduced to indigo not as a dye plant, but as a medicinal plant, firstly, as an antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. But of course, color have also this amazing aspect of having those healing purpose, if of course you believe in, because in our tradition, for different ceremony, we use specific dyes for their therapeutic purpose as well. Of course, indigo is one of them, because all those plants have their own use as medicinal plant before coming to be used as a dye plant as well. So you can see tunics, those tunics, I'm using different technique in this process, stitch resist, tie resist, were very common in using an indigo vat. So this is a sleeveless tunic with this stitch resist. Also, this technique is very specific. Those designed, if I can say so, are very specific to West Africa. And during my research, those are some of the tie or stitch resist I have discovered with some cultural groups, like in Dogon country with the Dogon people, or Bamano, a cultural group in West Africa. So I was saying that I'm making garments like tunic, trousers as well, and homewares. Those are some of the trousers of this collection. And the off-white itself is also a very beautiful color, I can say, because this is the color of the cotton. And one of the reasons I'm using this raw material is because in Mali, in Africa, Mali is one of the biggest cotton producer on all the continent, but we don't transform even 2% of this raw material. It's always sent overseas to be transformed, because we don't have those factory to transform in terms of spinning and weaving. And my concern is hand textile, and I think it's really important for me to maintain those traditions of, as I have said, spinning, weaving, and dyeing from this very traditional material, trying to create, kind of contemporary language or something more universal as well. So those are some hand-spun Finimugu kimono, I can say kimono jacket, all hand tailored using indigo here. Yeah, as you said. So this is a project I did over 20 years ago by dyeing yarns to give to a traditional weaver. Those were milk cotton yarns. They are not hand spun, but they are kind of vintage roll I had. And during the pandemic, I went through my archives and I have seen those rolls of narrow bands in stripe woven, and I said, this is the time now to try to do something with those. And those are some of the jacket who came from this vintage narrow band I had for many years.
Aboubakar, can I ask a question? On these vintage pieces, these are one of a kind, essentially, yeah?
Yes, those are one of a kind, but I have the project now, and we started already to keep going with this tradition of narrow bands, of course. Even we have possibility to weave in a larger loom, larger width, but to still start again dyeing yarns and give work to traditional weavers to be able to continue this. Yeah, all those stripes here are one of kind. Yes, those one are one of kind. And maybe in a few months, when we set the process again on, I can be able to propose more of this product.
And are the design motifs, are the little diamonds and the small rectangles, are those all traditional
Yes.
designs?
Those are traditional. At that time, when I was working with those traditional weavers, and I did ask them if they had any meaning, any symbolic meaning about, and of course, like many traditions, because they learn with their elders, and and they keep repeating some of those motifs without knowing exactly what was the meaning behind those symbols. Yeah, so, but yeah, it's been very interesting, and it's also maybe the subject of some research again for me to try to understand more about all these symbols again. And this is one of, I would call it one of the masterpieces in terms of accessory in our studio, a product I really like making, even I'm not making a lot. Maybe in 1 year, I would make maybe less than 10 pieces, because they are very labor intensive and time consuming, especially for the finishing of the edges, the tassels, with this macrame and the long fringes. It's called Dissa, and Dissa was used by many different cultural groups in West Africa. And the story about this specific accessory was that this is a men's wedding shawl, but there is also the women's one. And when women, how can I say, birth a male, they will start saving to be able to gift this piece to their son the day he become a man. It means that in the classic society, men will get married at much younger age, of course, but the mother will spin all the yarns and take the bobbin to the weavers to make the narrow bands. And then at the end, it will be dyed by the dyer in a very deep indigo shade we call the lomasa. Lomasa means divine blue or divine sky. And the day the day he get married, he will have this as present from his mom. And of course, it was several bands. There were much larger than those I'm using here. Is a kind of interpretation, but it's not anymore the original classic product, because the man will use it all his life, and the day he passed away, he will be wrapped in that shawl, indigo dyed shawl, to be buried, because in the spiritual way, we said that the indigo is the link between, or the blue is a color of protection, is a link between humans and the divine. And the fact that this fabric he started wearing when he was quite young, when he get married, and he keep it all his life. And by just having that on his shoulder, it was supposed to remind him that he's just a human being, because this was wearing his shroud on his shoulder every single day, and wearing his shroud was reminding him that as a human being, life and death are linked. It can come anytime, and you have to be ready. And those tassels also were used by the men while they were traveling, or if they were trader with a cow or a goat or sheep. All those tassels will be used as a kind of calculator to accounting, and the way also of tying the nuts and undoing them. If he was traveling by horse riding or by walking every day, every past day will not one fringe to be sure of how many days he did spend on his trip, because people could easily travel for months by walking. And so those tassels was very helpful to have this accounting, calculating their days, or if they were a shepherd, or to the number of cow or anyway animals they have. So this is one of the products who's very dear to me and to my team as well, because it took me many years to have this traditional hand tailor, an old man I met many years ago, who trained me to do those Dissa fringe. So also really honoring his memory. Yeah. And those are our plain indigo dyed. As you know, indigo has this richness in terms of shades. And when you think indigo, of course, plant source blue, but my fascination when I was a child, when I discovered the fact that how from green leaves we can make blue colors, and knowing also that in my traditions you will be considered as an indigo dyer only if you could master 12 different shades. And those 12 different shades took me, I would say, over 18 years to master. And of course, I'm still learning about my métier, but to come to those 12 shades, each of them have a specific name, and because we said also each of them is a specific emotion. So from the very pale one or the very light one we can call Bagafu in my mother tongue, and with the blue of nothingness to the dark midnight blue, you have all this range who make indigo as a very fascinating substance or medium in terms of color as well. And of course, and when I think indigo color come to me, but the invisible aspect before you get to the color is also even more interesting to me. My grandmother, who was a herbalist using indigo as medicinal plant, is the one who would say often that the blue is the outcome of the plant, but to be able to get this outcome, the plant have to give its spirit or its soul for you to be able to have the outcome, or for her to be able to heal both the body and the spirit of the sick people she used to heal, to work on the healing process. Yeah. So yeah, the studio in Bamako with some of our vats, 350 liter vat. So yeah, as you can see, this the richness of those blue different shades. Yeah, this also another masterpiece. I will call that piece a masterpiece because like the Dissa shore, this is those dots are the symbol of a bird we find in the savannah, or kind of mythical bird also in our cosmology. Is a very clever bird we call the Guinea Camille, but it's the Guinea fowl, who's a beautiful bird and also a very clever bird because he's the one who's alerting the other animal because of his how can I say, his noise. The noise is making a very sharp noise, and who always tell all the other animal when there is any danger coming in the savannah. So this motif or this design, I saw it for the first time in a Dogon country, in a place, in a very beautiful village called Jigibombo. Jigibombo was one of the, when I was researching on my Indigo journey, I arrived in that village, and I saw those textile on the floor drying, and I stopped there and I started asking the women that I was looking for some indigo balls to experiment and asking questions. And of course, they was very skeptical about my presence as a man, because in this specific area, only women was dyers, not men, because they use the clay pots for women's, and men will mostly use indigo pits. You know, they dig in the ground and make the pits. And in our conversation, after 2 days, they decided to bring me some of indigo balls, and I could see them literally going in their room and bringing some basket from under their bed, you know, to bring those indigo balls. And under their bed was also the same place they were hiding their jewelry. So it did really says that how precious was this raw material for them at that time. And the version of the stitch resist who make this design is another product. Maybe we can see in this slideshow. So here you have a different, and this is the version of guinea fowl with mud, dyed with mud. This is two different shades, with a first plain dye and then stitch resist, and then over dyed with mud again. And here you can see these gray spots at then the dark black on top. And this is a mineral mud, who's called the Bogolan. Bogolan is a rich, iron-rich mud we collect from the Niger River, and using also another medicinal plant who contain tannin called galama. The scientific name is Aneogesis leocarpa. So that plant also is a chemical reaction between the iron-rich mud and the tannin from the plant to create those oxidation and those different shade by layering them. So yeah, so guinea fowl in different different style, I would say. Yeah. And yes, this is the shawl I'm calling the Jiggy Bombo, in the memory of this village in the Dogon country. And you can see this textured shawl. Each dot is a stitch resist by the needle on the thread. And this is part of the design. And then to get to the guinea fowl, you have to undo every single dot. And it's many days again to be able to get the guinea fowl without cutting the fiber under, of course. So, yeah, guinea fowl. Yeah, another, I mean, they are not all masterpieces, but this one specifically is the one who takes the most time in all the accessories we are creating in our studio. It's the Telem shawl. The Telems were the people who were living in the place now we call the Dogon country. This is inspired from an archaeological textile from the 11th century by over-stitching the fiber to give the fiber longer life. And it's called tinia. And the original piece was a kind of headscarf. And now, of course, I'm making different product with this over-stitching. And all the thread we are using are from hand-spun cotton, and we are twisting all the thread to make them stronger to be able to do the embroidery. So, because I'm a fiber addict, I'm also always researching and sourcing fiber from all over. And those are a very classical product, linen, fine linen gauze dyed in different shades. So they are Belgian linen I'm sourcing here. This is a hemp, a French hemp. You must know that Europe, before they get the very, how can I say, the exotic fiber like cotton, or they were producing more linen and hemp. And hemp is one of also with linen, some of my favorite fiber, and especially for summer accessories. And the hemp have a heavier weight, and they takes always color amazingly. I mean, all those natural fiber are really delicious with natural dyes, and I do love using them in my work process. Yeah, and with of course indigo and mud. Yeah. With some mud application on some of the shawls I'm proposing in this trunk shawl as well. This is a hemp dyed with mud. I mean, any natural fiber, no matter if it's a protein fiber or cellulosic fiber, takes natural dyes amazingly. So depending the small drop collection I'm doing, we'll do limited edition on different things. Those are all hand painted with mud, and this is all hand painted on linen and hemp and sometimes cotton. Yeah, this is wool gauze, wool etamine, and those two colors are from. Of course, I'm more known for my indigo work and mud dye, but I'm using all natural dyes. Even this work is less known in my working process, but this here is Acacia catechue for the red. There is some mordant and walnuts for the brown in the background. Yeah. And some image from the farm. This was during the rainy season, and we can see those beautiful clouds and the green. And the rainy season is already, is over since almost 2 months now. And we are going into this challenging season of the dry season. And in this farm, we are not only growing the different species of indigo, we are working also on food security for the different community who are living next to this this village. There is 2 villages. The farm is in between 2 villages. And when I had that land 7 years ago, it was a very damaged land. And the work we had to do with this women's community was first healing the land to be able to grow different things, indigo medicinal plant, dye plants, and the different crop. This year we had a really amazing rainy season. That was really, really great. And we had different crop, corn, peanuts, and we had also many vegetables like eggplant, cucumber, lots of chili, some hibiscus, what else? Many different things. And we had also to work in reforesting that land. That was one of the very important things. And we did plant lots of trees. And the dry season is challenging because water is really rare and precious things there. And last dry season we did, of course, lost some of those trees, young trees, because we did not have enough water, and because it was a very hard dry season. But we hope that this year we will be able to maintain those young trees before they get strong enough to be able to go through the dry season and come back to life when the first rain come back. Yeah.
Aboubakar, that is the end.
Okay, thank you.
Look at this beautiful piece, so nice.
This diaporama, I would say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't know
So-
if there is any question for me, or if we have
Yeah.
any time for
Can you
questions.
moderate if there are any questions quickly?
There are, people just love listening to Aboubakar's voice and looking at all the beautiful images and all the beautiful work. There was one question that was very specific about whip stitching, if whip stitching was involved.
Whip stitching. So
Whip
sorry,
stitching.
and talking also with my, I always apologize with my rusty English. What you call whip stitching?
The one where you go, you have the seams of
Okay.
the finimugu and you go over it like this.
Oh, okay. All right. So what was the question about that? The whip stitching? Sorry, can you?
It was so far back, but somebody was asking if how about if you use a whip stitch technique when you're making I think it was for a scarf that they were asking.
That technique is the one we use to gather the narrow bands.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 ways of gathering the narrow bands. We have by using this stitch, we can make it flat, and by putting the finimugu like edge against edge like this, or by having the 2 pieces like this and stitching at the edge to give this kind of textured aspect to the final result. And of course, we could use it in terms of stitch resist as well. We did not have any design of that here, but by folding the fabric in different layers, and by using this stitching technique, you can create very beautiful, and also working on the spacing on the stitching, you will create a very beautiful stitch resist design on the fabric. Yeah.
I have a question here. I found
Yeah.
one that wasn't just ooh. And I've also been putting in the chat the link to the trunk show that's up on our site. And we also have a donation page for Aboubakar's farm. And I put that up too. So if you are interested in just going directly to donate to the farm, please do that. Let's see, Suzanne's asking, what was indigo used for medicinally?
Yeah.
Or maybe how it was, yeah.
Yeah, indigo, as I was saying, that I've been introduced to indigo as a medicinal plant, but I'll still nowadays, there is many traditional therapists, what we call traditional herbalists, who still use indigo. Indigo is used as an antiseptic and anti-inflammatory. Anytime you have any wound, you cut yourself and blood come out, so just take the indigo leaves and crush it, and the fresh leaf, of course, the fresh leaves, and apply to the wound as a cataplasm. And it's really, really magical. It's really, really a wonderful healing plant. And when also the women have their moon, I can say painful moon, is also boiled and drink for women to, you know, to for that. And inside the fiber, the dyed fiber, the therapeutic aspect is used, for example, to welcome a newborn baby with indigo dyed sheet fabric. I mean, wrap skirt, I don't know, sheet, anything you want, because it's not only because spiritually is a color of protection, but it's also, how can I say, minimize all this blood coming, like the same way when women have their moon also. Traditionally, they will wear the wrap skirt dyed with indigo, because if any blood come out, it will be absorbed by the indigo, the colors. And it's also the same way that we said women who have desire to how can I say, to have baby, and for the fertility aspect, wearing indigo wrap skirt, you know, make them fertile. And there is many way, you know, we use the dyed garment, indigo dyed garment as medicinal plant, even like as much as we know that synthetic dyes you know, long time on the skin is harmful, and especially for the black color who's used with some synthetic product called the benzoate, who can be bring cancer to the skin. But in our tradition, wearing a tunic with a specific dyes, that's why we use garment not only as in the fashion way, but as a medicinal support, as a therapeutic support, because we do believe that when you dye the fiber with a specific plant, and when you are wearing that on your skin, the plants will transfer its therapeutic purpose on your skin to heal you. This is how also my grandmother was using commissioning tunics and trousers to dyers for some of their patients to wear those garments, because they are dyed with plants, but those plants are medicinal plants, and also they are dye plant because they give beautiful colors, but for the both notion of healing and protecting, you know, the garment is used as that way. So for next summer, we are also planning with Cathy some workshop. Then we don't know all the subject because it's up to people on the interest you have about the different technique. It could be a garment stitching or dyeing, no matter if it's indigo, other natural dyes, or mud dyeing. But there is many different, how can I say, subject we will work on those coming weeks or months to see if there is any interest for those coming summer, next summer in Seattle. I'm hoping also that this travel time will be less crazy than it's been during those past 2 years. And with the vaccine and all this, but we don't know how many variants we're gonna have again, but we do hope that with vaccination and the mask, we could be able again to come to have a live workshop, or if it's not possible, we will continue in virtual workshop as we did those past 2 years. Yeah.
We're so excited for this.
Mm.
We're really excited. So
did I answer the question? Sorry about.
Yeah.
you did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
fantastically. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone's got the links to all those beautiful heirloom garments
Mhm.
and accessories, and you have the information for donation should you choose as well. We'll be announcing the workshops with Aboubakar for the summer. Yeah, I think once we get through the holidays, we'll have a better sense of how things are going with the latest variants and travel, etc. But so far, so good. Amy, anything else? Aboubakar, thank you so much for taking your time. I know it's nighttime where you are.
Thank you for hosting this gathering.
Yeah, it was really great to see you again, to see that you're doing well. And yeah, I'm sure I'll follow up with you soon about, what we have.
Thank you everyone for staying for this conversation.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful and grateful to all of you, and wishing you everyone a beautiful rest of the day if you are in your morning. And
you are going to have a nice dinner and have a restful evening.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
All
everyone.
right, you guys, everyone, we can unmute and say hello and goodbye.
Bye.
Hello and goodbye.
Hello and goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hello and goodbye.
Amy, you can
Hello,
unpin
goodbye.
me.
I
Hi, guys.
unpinned you.
Thank you.
I did.
Good.
Bye.
Great.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye. Good night. Bye. Good night, Aboubakar.
Thank you.
Yes, good night,
That was
Aboubakar.
cute.
Night, everybody.
Bye.
Good holiday. I'll see you next week.
Hello, goodbye.
Bye.
Good health,
Aboubakar. Thank you,
I
guys.
see you, Rachel
Bye.
McHenry.
Goodbye. Here with my mom.
Thank you.
Hi, Mom McHenry.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Hello and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hi, Judy.
Hi,
Thank
Tilly.
you. Good to
So
see
good to
you.
see you.
Hello, goodbye.
Yeah, take care.
That's Judy Dominique.
Yes.
The little raised hand.
Yes, yes, yes. Just hi. Yeah.
All right. Amy,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
gonna stop this recording.
Stop it.
It's stopped.